All right, let's dive into one of the most fascinating and kind of subtle puzzles in all of Christian theology. It's all about the third person of the Trinity, the Holy Spirit. And it's a question that, when you really dig into it, reveals something absolutely profound about the very nature of God. And here it is, the big question. We know the Holy Spirit is God. The Bible is crystal clear on that. So, why is it that when you comb through the scriptures, through every prayer, every hymn, every scene of worship, you see praise going to God the Father and to Jesus the Son, but never explicitly to the Holy Spirit? What's going on there? Now, before we go any further, let's get one thing straight. This isn't a debate about whether the Spirit is divine. That's a settled deal. I mean, you've got that intense moment in the book of Acts where Peter tells a guy named Ananias that by lying to the Holy Spirit, he hadn't just lied to people, but he lied to God. So case closed. The Holy Spirit is fully God. And honestly, that's what makes this whole question so interesting. So, to start cracking this mystery, we first have to get a handle on the Spirit's primary role. How does he actually interact with us? Well, the Bible doesn't paint a picture of some distant deity. No, it's way more like an intimate partner. This verse right here is a huge clue. The Apostle Paul calls us laborers together with God. Think about that language. That's not a king and his distant subjects. That sounds like a team, working side by side on the same project. It's all about active, purposeful collaboration. And you see this dynamic all over the place. We're meant to be led by the Spirit. God is the one who worketh in you, and he does it by the Spirit. Our whole Christian life is supposed to be a walk in the Spirit. Even at the very end of the Bible, it's not just us crying out for Jesus to return, it's the Spirit and the bride saying, "Come together." It's a shared work, a shared voice, a shared mission. Okay, so the Spirit is our divine partner. That's cool. But how does that solve the worship puzzle? Well, the solution is found when we look at the Spirit's very specific, self-declared mission. This right here is the key that unlocks the whole thing. These are Jesus's own words, basically laying out the Holy Spirit's job description. And get this, the Spirit shall not speak of himself. His entire purpose, his whole mission, is to glorify one person, Jesus Christ. He doesn't talk about himself, he talks about Jesus. The best way to think about it is like this. The Holy Spirit is the divine spotlight operator. His job is to make sure that beam is always shining brightly on the star of the show, and that's Jesus. The Spirit's work is absolutely essential, it's powerful, it's divine, but he intentionally does it from behind the scenes to make sure all the glory, all the worship, all the attention goes to the Son. And this brings us to a really important distinction. The Bible doesn't show worship of the Spirit, but it talks constantly about worship in the Spirit. You see the difference? We worship God through the power and the help of the Spirit. He's the one who inspires true worship, but he's not the one it's directed to. He's like the divine current that carries our praise to the Father and the Son. You know, this whole mission, this intentional background role, it reveals something absolutely breathtaking about the Spirit's character. We're not just looking at a job description here. We're seeing the humility of God himself in action. I mean, just look at what he does. He chooses to live inside us, inside imperfect human beings. He's our helper, our comforter. He connects us to God. And in our weakest moments, when we don't even know what to pray, he steps in and intercedes for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. Every single role is one of service, of support, of lifting someone else up. So this is the Holy Spirit. He is literally God choosing to live inside us. He's the unseen advocate, always pleading our case. He is the very breath of glory, whose entire existence is about giving all that glory away to someone else. It's a really stunning display of divine humility. All right, now for the final piece of evidence. And this one is the clincher. It comes from the book of Revelation, from one of the most dramatic moments in the entire Bible, and it confirms everything we've just talked about. So try to imagine this. The Apostle John is getting this incredible vision of heaven, of the future, of everything, and he's being guided by this glorious, powerful heavenly messenger. John is so completely overwhelmed, so full of awe, that he does what feels natural. He falls down at the messenger's feet to worship him. But the response is immediate, and it's forceful. "See thou do it not." Whoa, don't do it. The angel totally refuses the worship. And instead, he identifies himself. He says, "I am your fellow servant," and then gives a command, "Worship God."
And then comes the knockout line, for the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy.
So what in the world is the spirit of prophecy? It's the Holy Spirit. It's his ministry. His entire job, every true prophecy, every divine revelation, is to bear witness to testify about one person, Jesus. The angel is basically saying, hey, the very Spirit speaking through me right now is totally focused on Jesus. And this is where it all just clicks into place. This is the Holy Spirit speaking through a messenger, explicitly refusing to be worshipped. He doesn't say, wait, hey, I'm God too, you can worship me as well. Nope. He aligns himself with us, calling himself a fellow servant with the exact same job as every believer, to point people to Jesus. So let's just bring it all home. The Spirit is fully God, yes. His primary mission? To glorify Christ. He inspires our worship, but is never the object of it. And his revealed character? A humble fellow servant who points everyone and everything to Jesus. The reason we don't see worship directed to the Spirit is because the Spirit himself directs all worship away from himself and toward the Son. He just wouldn't have it any other way. And that just leaves us with a final thought to chew on. In a world that is constantly scrambling for the spotlight, for credit, for attention, the third person of the Godhead finds his glory in promoting another. It really makes you ask, right? What can this divine hidden work and this profound humility teach us about what true greatness and real service look like in our own lives?